Hi, and welcome to This Moment, 20-minute webinars with people who have looked despair in the face and made the choice to change the narrative with their actions. I'm Allie Palmer, and over here is Samir. Tell them what your last name is, Samir.
Amir Selmanovic. I'm
Sina.
here in New York as well.
I love it. It's such a great name. On the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. Please write comments and questions for our fantastic guest because you are a part of all this. We are so honored to have as our guest brilliant author, award-winning playwright, and world-changing activist, Eve Ensler. Hi, Eve.
Hi, Allison. I can't tell you what a joy it is to be with you, as you are one of my favorite people in the world.
Oh, honey bun, you know I feel the same way. So this is the perfect time and place for both of us because it really is all about this moment, isn't it, Eve?
It is indeed. It is.
What a lot of people don't know about Eve is that she surrounds herself with the most gorgeous homes you can imagine. Anyone who saw your amazing show, In the Body of the World, saw that incredible reveal of the jungle at the end where all of a sudden you invited the audience to come up and people were wandering around in these beautiful fronds and there were ottomans and lights hanging. And it was just the most magical place. Is beauty healing to you?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I always remember Georgia O'Keeffe talking about how she felt like every day when she got dressed, it was if she were making a work of art, what she put on her body, and that she was really creating art in the way she dressed, in the way she lived, and what she had in her house, and I feel like, and now I'm living deep in the woods, and so it's a real different kind of beauty. It's the beauty of sky. It's the beauty of birds. It's the beauty of land. It's the beauty of water. It's the beauty of textures outside and the seasons changing. And I think beauty is not only it's not only inspirational, but it's calming. It's hopeful, and it makes you kinder. I sometimes look at all the strip malls across America and it just, I understand why we're depressed in this country. We don't take time to make things beautiful. And making things
100%.
beautiful is such a, making art is the deepest expression of our souls.
I completely agree with you. And you're right. Even just looking in the mirror and doing something special with your hair can be creating art every single day. I completely agree with you on that. Well, you've taken us along on a 21-year long journey from the Vagina Monologues in 1998, and then last year, your brilliant book, The Apology, and all along you've been doing this incredible, spectacular healing. For someone who weathered the trauma that you did, which we don't have to talk about right now, but you have been someone who has really gone through so much trauma as a young person. Why did you create the Vagina Monologues in the first place that started this whole journey?
You know, I think it was curiosity. I think the best things begin with curiosity. I was talking to a friend who was a feminist who was going through menopause, and she was saying the most frightening things about her vagina, that it was dried up and prune-like and finished and dead. And to be honest, I was horrified. And I was like, oh my God. And then I started thinking, well, what do women think about their vaginas? And I just started casually saying to a friend, well, what do you think about your vagina? And the first woman I said it to said, my mother used to tell me, don't wear panties underneath your pajamas. You need to air out your pussycat. And I thought, oh my God. So it just began this incredible exploration, which was just for my personal edification.
Oh, wow.
And then I interviewed this woman who told me this story about having a bad sexual experience when she was a teenager, which humiliated her, and she had never had sex again. And she was a woman in her 70s. And she'd never had an orgasm, and I was devastated by that. And so I took those interviews, and I did a lot of them, and then I put them aside, and then I created these fictional pieces that grew out of them. And, you know, I had no idea what would happen. I think when I first performed the Vagina Monologues this theater way downtown, I thought someone would shoot me. But it was incredible because what it engendered was all these women who wanted to tell me their story, and they would line up after every show, lines of women just to tell me. And unfortunately, the majority of women were not telling me about their great sex lives or their desires fulfilled. They were telling me about their abuse, which is really when I came to really be it was like 22 years ago when I began to understand the magnitude and the pervasiveness of violence against women and all girls and all women.
Which brings me to a huge question. Eve, you do more work than anybody I've ever known. You work at Bedford Hills Correctional Society. You work with the homeless. You work with all these women who have been through such trauma, and yet somehow you keep having hope. How does the despair not crush you down? Where is it that you find your rebirthing all the time?
Well, I worked at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. I love that you called it. You had a very beautiful society. It's actually a prison, but
Yeah,
it's
but
a society.
but isn't that a society?
Yeah,
Hello?
society. I wish they called it that. But I worked there for 8 years, and I think if I look at that, if I look at homeless women, if I look at women in refugee camps, if I look at places I've been privileged and honored to be invited to hear stories, the stories are really, really painful.
Oh,
But I think what's also extraordinary is to example be a part of a group in a women's facility with long-term inmates who are there for violent crimes, who are struggling week after week to come to terms with what they've done, to look into their souls, to look at their histories, to look at their part in their crimes, to wrestle down their demons, and to be able to be with them and to be a witness and to be in solidarity with that process. And I think that's true about women I've met everywhere. Is yes, there is. If I think of Jane in the Congo, who is now one of the leaders at our Sanctuary and Revolutionary Center, City of Joy, she
right.
went through more abuse and more horror than any woman I know on this planet. And yet, her spirit is the most radiant spirit. She is a bodhisattva on this planet. She gives back to the women. She lifts the women. She inspires the women. So I think when you see women turning their poison to medicine or turning their pain to power, you feel in awe of that, and it's so inspiring just to be in the mix of that.
Right. Yes, I definitely hear that. But how? For the people who've turned into this because they are feeling the crushing despair that our 24-hour news cycle is throwing down on us, how is it, do you think, that people can find the new flowers, to find that, to turn their pain from poison?
I mean, I always have believed like if you want to heal the broken, give what you want the most to heal the broken part of yourself, right? And so I think in the hardest times of my life, I've sometimes, I once worked on in a homeless shelter on 30th Street, and I was going through a terrible breakup of a relationship, and I was in total despair. But I went there all the time, and I would be with the women, and I would support the women, and I would find ways to love the women, and we'd have groups, and by doing that, it was like it got me out of me. It got me out of my pain and my narcissism, my whatever. And I think sometimes we live in this climate and this culture, which is it wants us to focus so much on ourselves that we get into this total despair because the self is a kind of I don't know, like you hit a bottom there, like in yourself.
Absolutely.
And I
It's
think
unsustainable.
it's unsustainable. And I think one of the joys of being alive is to be in solidarity, to be in service, to be in community, to work with people and to get out of your pain. So I would say if you're really, in despair right now, go campaign for someone you believe in. Go work in a homeless shelter. Go support women who are really being hit up on the border and go, like I've been down to Brownsville and I've been down to Juarez and there are so many people down there who need support and need love. Find the people who are a little worse off than you are, so you can find the usefulness in yourself and you can see the value in yourself, and you're not frozen in some kind of pain. And the other thing I would say is, like, we got to move our bodies. So much of this our life is in front of the screen, and I think sometimes we stop being people with bodies, right?
Oh, yes, my girl.
And I think we need to dance and we need to move and we need to do yoga and we need to run in the fields. And the last thing I would say is connecting to nature. Because when you're in the presence, like right now, there's an incredible wind here and it feels like everything's just about to take off and off. When you're in the presence of that, you realize that what a small dot you are, just an infinitesimal dot you are in the whole experience that is existence. And there's something very, very humbling and relieving about that, so that
I
all your pressures and intensities, it's like the wind takes it away. the trees
Ugh.
take away, you know?
I completely do know what you mean. And it is so unfortunate that so many of our fellow citizens don't really have access to go someplace where they can actually do that. You know, our parks are so designed to be small and contained, like little prisons themselves. It would be great if we had some sort of a federal works program where people could actually
Definitely.
go out there and be in the world.
And also just like getting on a train or getting on a bus and just go to the country for the day, walk in the fields. The bus isn't that expensive, you know? I mean, I think there's ways to do it, but I totally agree. I think we have to have ways that people from the city are getting out of the four-walled reality.
Absolutely. And welcomed, Eve. And
And
welcomed. Because I think a lot of times people are just afraid. I know my daughter did a summer program, and she went to a town in Ohio, and it was a great school that she went to, but she saw Confederate flags everywhere. So she wanted to stay on the campus instead. We need to make sure that this is a more welcoming country and community. And unfortunately, we have a leader right now that does not believe in that, who believes in the exact opposite of that. So as you said, maybe people should go out there and be helping politic it up and support their candidates,
yes, yes, and
whomever they may be.
I agree with you about the safety factor, and I think that's true everywhere. We live in the most divisive. We're seeing the rise of white supremacy in ways. You know, it's always been here. Let's not fool ourselves. Trump is just the predator in chief is just a manifestation of this country's history and unreckoned history. And
Yes.
we have an opportunity now to reckon with it. And I hope, you know, when we look at racism, when we look at sexism, when we look at the way we treat immigrants, when this is a country of immigrants, this is the time for real radical transformation.
Thank you for being one of the people that's leading that radical transformation. As a matter of fact, you have an organization called 1 Billion Rising, and I was thrilled to see this amazing artwork about vibration. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, first, I'll just tell you about 1 Billion Rising. You know, VDay is a movement to end violence against all women, cisgendered, transgendered, and non-binary women, and non-binary people. And we've been around now for I think 21 years. You know, and the first part of it was like performing the Vagina Monologues and Memory Monologue and Rant and Prayer and other pieces that people curated on VDay to raise money for local groups that were working to stop violence. I gave the play away free, and I have for the last 22 years on that particular time, so people can raise that money. And we've raised, you know, millions and millions of dollars. That's all stayed in local communities. And then 15 years in, I was like, oh my God, violence is still here. We have to up the ante. We have to do something more. And I was in Congo, and I was just in the middle of watching these amazing women who had been through the worst atrocities, and they were dancing. And the power of their dancing was just, it was just, it was just mystical. It was beyond anything I could ever imagine. And I thought to myself, what if 1 billion women, which is the number of women, 1 out of 3 women in the world who have been raped or beaten, what if they all rose and danced on the same day with all the men who love them? And what if all the forces came together to create this energy that began to shift the energy on the planet? And that started 9 years ago. And the first year it was in 200 countries, and it's been growing and growing and growing ever since. And this year I really had a notion about just vibration. Like I feel like everything is energy. Everything
100%. I agree with you.
energy. And I think right now this country is in very, 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 very low energy. It's very, very low energy. This predator in chief has debased people. He's humiliated people. He's divided people. He's bullied people. He's created a very violent, very fearful. That people are in fear here. And I thought we will never have the tools to go at that. We will never be selfish enough. We will never be cruel enough. We will never be mean enough. We will never, that's not who we are.
Why would we want to?
Exactly. But what we can do is create another field of energy that is inviting, that is inclusive, that is that loves people, that celebrates people, that doesn't want war, that invites migrants, that knows that they're welcome here, and really begin to create an energy, a vibration that is so powerful that people are like, I don't want that over there. I want to be here. So this year our theme was raising the vibration, and it was incredible, from Africa to South America to all over Europe to Asia, to see how everyone interpreted that notion of raise the vibration. It was fantastic, just fantastic.
And you know, I've always felt that too, because in teaching physics that I do to little children, every little cell, every atom is going like this, is vibrating. They don't even touch each other. And yet we create this amazing, what seems to be solid whole. So I am 100% with you, darling. I think it's a great way to go. We have a question from someone who says, one of the things I try to do is teach my students to appreciate beauty and aesthetics. This comes naturally to children in early years, noticing a star sparkling in the sky or a bird flying in the distance. But as we age, we become more distracted. It's so important to keep this feeling alive in all of us. It helps me throughout my life in dealing with difficult times. It gives me hope, peace, and connection. Thoughts on how we can make this powerful quality more accessible for those who don't innately feel it? Thank you for that question, RL.
What a beautiful question.
Gorgeous.
You know, I would say it comes down to being present, to being where you are. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday I was writing and I suddenly heard this amazing noise. I had no idea what it was. Now, if I weren't present, I wouldn't have heard that noise. I would have been distracted by the internet, pulled out. But my dog and I, Pablo, my amazing dog, the most amazing dog in the whole world, comes from Tijuana, from the streets, and he's a rescue dog. And
Of course he is, Eve. It's you. Of course he is.
He's also like the most mystical, amazing dog. And he heard the sound. We both heard the sound. We were like, what's going on? We went outside and there were hundreds of starlings, hundreds of them. The sound was, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. They were sitting in all the trees, and when one would move, the whole swarm would move. It was just like the most beautiful ballet of starlings. And I literally stopped my work. I stood there in awe for a good 15 minutes while they just swarmed and danced and fun and landed. And I feel like that begins early. We have to teach our children to hear what they're hearing, to see what they're seeing, to touch what they're touching. Otherwise, this culture of high-paced commodification, consumerism will get everybody going just to the next, to the next, to the next,
Yes.
as opposed to really focusing on the major miracle, the paradise that is right around us and in front of us.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because that's one of the reasons why Samir and I created this moment, because we needed to give people a couple minutes just to stop and to breathe when there's so much chaos everywhere. So thank you for being the goddess that reminds us that this is a world and a universe that we are part of. We are literally made of the same stuff. I love the phrase that we are all made out of stardust. And to stop and recognize that, if we could, every moment of every day, but at least every day, would be healthy for all of us. Unfortunately, my love, Eve, we've run out of time. That's the beauty of a 20-minute thing. You're here and then you're gone and then that's it. But I just wanted to say thank you. That's all the time we have today. If you want more, you can always visit thismomentaction.org. Thank you for being here. And next week, Samir is going to be sharing simple actions to help us all stay on track. In 2 weeks, on March 26th, our next live guest will be for a panel from Planned Parenthood, the Feminist Institute, and the ERA Coalition, discussing equality strategies, both serious and crazy fun. Thank you, Eve Ensler, for being who you are and being such an angel on earth. You can always find out more from Eve at eveensler.org. Eve, do you want to just tell us one last thing that you're doing?
Oh, lots is happening, but you know.
I know you're traveling soon.
Yeah, but I can't officially announce it, so I'll announce it. Okay.
Okay, well, Eve is just being mysterious and wonderful. But one thing that Eve is going to be doing is going to be joining all of us in Washington, D.C. on April 25th from 1 to 5 p.m. We're going to be having a free artistic uprising called This Moment Rally, an ethical spectacle. We'll be celebrating our mutual moral support in this time of moral decay. And performing are going to be amazing artists like Nona Hendricks, the B-52s, Kate Pearsons, my band Betty, poet Stacey Ann Chin, Rochelle Rice, family favorites Dan Zanes and Claudia Zanes, so many people who are going to be coming together to turn despair into hope, anger into action, and all of us into the leaders that we need right now. It's all part of an incredible weekend called the Revolutionary Love Conference, where thought leaders and people of faith from all over the world are convening to use spirit to fuel action toward a more perfect union. You can still get tickets for the Revolutionary Love Conference at revolutionaryloveconference.com. And our event is free. So just make sure you're there on Saturday, April 25th between 1 and 5. Eve is going to be singing and dancing for us, which we can't wait for. For Samir, Ben Perry, and our whole team, I'm Allie Palmer. And we have one more question, and this is for you. You. What are you going to do this moment? Thanks, everybody.